Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Education USA's Saturday webinars in India. Thank you for joining us. Today's session is on law programs in the US for international students. Before I introduce today's speakers, I'd like to share some information about who we are and what we do. Education USA is a US Department of State supported body, and our mandate is to provide accurate, current, and comprehensive information to students who are looking to pursue higher studies in the US. We have 7 advising centers in India and over 400 worldwide. For more information, please visit educationusa.state.gov. In our efforts to reach more students, we conduct these virtual information sessions twice a month on Saturdays at 10 a.m. We invite you and your friends to join us for these sessions where you can learn more about the different aspects of higher studies in the US. At this point, I'm going to ask all participants that if you have any technical questions or issues, please type your question into the chat box and I will respond there and try to help you deal with them. And at the end of the session, we will have time for questions. So I request that, for all other questions related to the topic under discussion, I request that you keep your questions till the end when we will go over them and answer them. For today's session, our speaker is Huilan Jackson, Associate Director of Admissions at DePaul University College of Law. Thank you so much for joining us. Especially since it is in the evening for you. We are ready to begin. Please go ahead, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Deborah, and thank you Education USA for this wonderful opportunity to share information about law programs in the United States for international students. As Deborah mentioned, my name is Huilan Jackson. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at DePaul University College of Law. We are located in Chicago, and some of the pictures you see on the slide actually is taken by another university. The first one is exactly the building that the law school is located at. So to give you a little bit of background of where we are. So I'd like to start the slides with basic introduction on the types of law programs that usually are inquired by international students. So these are the main 3 types of degrees that law schools usually offer. And the first one is the JD degree, which is basically referred to as the first degree in law in the United States. So in the United States, when people say, I go to law school, then they refer to this JD, Juris Doctor degree. It is a required for all US students who already received a bachelor's degree, and if they want to practice law and be admitted to the bar, they have to take this JD degree. Once you do complete this JD degree, you are eligible to take the bar in any state in the United States. The second degree is LLM degree, which is commonly referred by Master of Laws in a lot of international legal education setting. It is an advanced law degree intended for US and foreign law graduates. What that means is that you have to have a primary law degree in order to be considered for LLM degree. So in the United States, LLM degree is actually more advanced than JD degree because first you have to have a JD before you can apply and be admitted to LLM. However, for international foreign law graduates, it can be Bachelor of Law or it can be similar Juris Doctor system, but even if it's Bachelor of Law, since that's considered as primary law degree, you can go ahead and apply this LLM degree. There are a couple advantages for LLM degree, which we can talk about in brief moment. But the main purpose for many international students to consider this LLM degree is because of its bar eligibility in certain states, such as California and New York. The last degree that you would usually find on law school's website is master's degree, but do not confuse this with LLM degree. So master's degree, it can be usually referred as Master of Jurisprudence, MJ, or Master of Science in Laws. It is intended for people who do not seek to practice law, but who regularly encounter legal issues in their main area. So for example, people that are interested in compliance in a health administration or compliance in business setting, they would have this interest to learn more about the legal side of the things in that area. Again, that is not eligible for the bar exam. However, it is attractive for those who don't want to necessarily jump into a law degree, but want to gain certain legal education. So I thought of compare these programs in a different context. So as I mentioned, the audience is different. The JD, as you can see, is first degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree in order to apply in the United States. For LLM, you have to have a primary law degree before you can apply and be admitted. For Master of Jurisprudence or Master of Science in Law, that program, you just have to have a bachelor's degree. It does not require you to have a primary law degree. So here is more specific comparisons in terms of the length, tuition, bar exam eligibility. So as you can see, the JD is the most comprehensive program for legal education. It is 3 years full-time. Usually the law schools only have once a year enrollment in the fall. So for us at DePaul, fall semester usually begins in late August, and the suggested application deadline is usually April 1st of that year. But each law school has their own suggested deadline, so I recommend you to make sure to check the law school that you're interested at. So for LLM, it is 24 credit hours, 1 year full-time. Usually you can begin in the spring semester or fall semester, and the tuition can be significantly lower, and it is because it's per credit hour, and it's usually 24 credit hours versus 86, which is much, in terms of the credit hours requirements, it is quite different. For MJ, it is kind of in the middle, but each law school might have their own requirements for a degree. So this chart, again, is based on more of DePaul's current law programs. So for MJ, it is 30 credits. It can be completed in 1.5 year full-time or 6 years part-time. So as you can see, the merit scholarships, even though the tuition for JD is significantly higher than any other programs on this chart, the merit scholarships is also usually much higher because admissions office usually have much higher budget in terms of the scholarships for JD programs. And again, this is for DePaul's current admissions scholarships policy. So if you are one of the strongest applicants, then you can be awarded up to $40,000 per year as a scholarships. So if you multiply that to 3, which is the 3-year full-time, that it is a pretty affordable degree, even though when you only look at the tuition, it can be very daunting. So there are a couple of things that you have to consider when you're trying to choose or decide a program to pursue. So first of all, you have to look at what the admissions requirements are. For example, for LLM program, you have to first have a primary law degree. So if you don't have that, then you should either start from JD or a MJ program. Also, for JD program, most of the cases you do require LSAT test, and that is administered by Law School Admission Council, LSAC, and I do recommend that website for a lot of information. And it does list all of the US law schools as well as the program offerings of each law school in the United States. And even if you decide to apply for JD or LLM, and sometimes even MJ, you do have the option to create a free account on lsac.org and go ahead with an application. And what LSAC does is that they collect your information, they would assemble the documents, and then they will send to the law schools that you're interested. So for some law schools, the JD programs, most of the law schools, in fact, for the JD program, you have to apply through lsac.org. Another thing is you have to consider the program length and cost of attendance. And I understand this can be a very important factor for many students, not only domestic US students, but also international students as well. So the lengthwise, the JD is the one that takes the most of the time. So it's 3 years full-time versus the MJ and LLM can be done in 1 year or a year and a half. So when you are looking at the tuition and cost of living, this is the cost of living is something that students do not think in advance before they decide to apply. Tuition is usually laid out on each law school's website. It's pretty clear how much you're going to pay for the tuition, but in terms of cost of living, you have to consider where this law school is located, if there's any public transit that you can take advantage of, what kind of lifestyle that it contains, because the cost of living can significantly increase the overall cost of attendance. So one thing that you can take advantage of when you are applying for law schools is the scholarships. So one thing that some students forget is that they consider public university to be much more affordable than private university. However, if you actually look at each law school's scholarship policy and opportunities, you might be surprised, in fact, how many available opportunities for scholarships in private university. So even though you might see the tuition being really high, comparing public versus private, but do pay attention to the scholarship opportunities because that oftentimes do subsidize the high tuition. So all law schools should have this information on their website. Estimated amount is usually for a single individual to attend that particular academic year and is adjusted annually. And if you do plan on bringing a spouse or children with you, the US government do require additional funds for you to demonstrate. So in terms of the scholarships, one is the basic merit scholarships that most of the law schools do have in their budget. So for us, in my previous chart, I did mention for LLM program, we have up to $10,000 as a scholarship for LLM program. For JD, it is up to $40,000 per year. However, each law school might have their own scholarship policy, and also sometimes schools would post the external scholarships that are available for the students. And it should be usually laid out under financial aid or tuition, or how to finance your education section of the website. Another important factor that you have to consider is your career goals. What is your objective after this degree? If your intention is to be able to practice the law in the United States after your program, then there are a couple of things that you have to first plan out. First of all, the bar admission. So bar admission can be tricky because each state has their own specific requirements. This is something that can be quite different compared to other countries. For example, China, it is a one national bar exam that you can take and then you can practice in any different provinces. However, in the United States, each state has their own state bar examiners board that they can determine if somebody can take the bar exam in that specific state. The simple rule is that with a JD degree, regardless of your domestic or international background, with a JD degree, you can take the bar exam in all 50 states. So that is clear and simple. It gets tricky when it comes down to LLM degree. If a foreign law graduate with a US LLM is eligible to take the bar exam. So there are a couple resources that you should look at when you are trying to determine which state you're trying to practice, which state you're trying to apply for law school. There's one website called National Conference of Bar Examiners. It basically has the list of different jurisdictions in the United States and lays out the specific state's requirements in terms of the bar admission. So pay attention that in terms of the bar admission, there's the education requirement, which is the degree that you're going to be getting, but there's also character and fitness. So no law school can guarantee if you can take the bar exam in a particular state or not, because at the end of the day, it is that particular state board of law examiners would determine if you are eligible. So what I would advise the prospective students to do is to take this online foreign evaluation form. For example, if you're considering New York bar exam, there is online resource called Online Foreign Evaluation Form, and you can fill it out, and that process might take as long as 6 months. So it is advisable to start this process early, and best to have a response from this New York State Bar Examiners Board prior to an LLM program. So make sure that the specific curriculum requirements for the bar exam is offered at the law school that you're applying for. One thing is that you do not have to go to a law school in that particular state in order to take the bar exam. Okay, and the bar exam is offered in February and July. So the last one is lifestyle. So as you may or may not know, it depends on the particular city and state that you are trying to go to. It can be very urban setting, or it can be very rural, peaceful, much more quieter setting. Some states have wonderful public transportation that you do not need a car, which can incur additional expenses, but except for certain cities in the United States, majority of the cities and states do require you to have a private transportation. Lastly, the culture. Consider if the city or the state that you're trying to go to is an environment that you're comfortable with. How is their welcoming culture towards international students? How is the culture or environment in that campus? So I just wanted to highlight a couple programs at DePaul, and I'm pretty sure there will be some other law schools in the United States that offer similar programs. So make sure that you are checking all the program offerings in different law schools because it can vary. So for us, we do have a 2-year JD program for foreign law graduates. So this means that if you already have a law degree in India, whether it's Bachelor of Law or whatever primary law degree that it can be, then when you apply for our JD program, you can be eligible for a 2-year JD program for foreign law graduates. Essentially, we'll be able to waive 28 credit hours out of your traditional JD program so that you can reduce the study time from 3 years to 2 years. So I do believe, the last time I checked, I do believe there's about 20 to 30 law schools in the United States that offer this type of program. And for us, the LSAT is not required. However, I do strongly recommend you to take it for a couple of reasons. One, traditionally, this type of accelerated JD programs can be very competitive in terms of the admission. So if you have a strong LSAT score, even though it's not required, if you do have a strong LSAT score that you can present to the admissions committee, one, it's going to significantly increase your chance of admission. Second, it will significantly increase the chance of your scholarships as well. Because for us, and as to many law schools, the admission decision and the scholarship decision are rendered at the same time. For that reason, I do strongly recommend you to take the LSAT if a JD is your ultimate goal. So for LLM wise, if you are interested in taking LLM, and if your goal is to take state bar in New York, for example, then we do have LLM in US Legal Studies that can be bar eligible in select states, and usually it can be New York. So again, you will need to check with New York Board of Examiners on your specific education background to see what additional requirements you would need in order to take the bar exam in that particular state. Okay. So I thought of give you a comparison in terms of the 2-year JD and LLM in US Legal Studies. Again, this slide is for people who already have a law degree in India. If you do not have a law degree in India, then your options would be JD or MJ, Master of Jurisprudence. So for 2-year JD, assuming that your primary law degree met our requirement for waiver up to 28 credit hours, then you only need 58 credits instead of 86 credit hours. And the LLM is 24 credit hours. So you can see one is 1 year, the other one is 2 years, still significant time difference. The begin term can be different. One starts in August, the other one starts in August and January. The tuition, again, is another big difference. However, pay attention to the merit scholarships, because if you are on the stronger side as an applicant, the JD side, it is for up to $40,000 per year. So for 2-year JD, the maximum scholarship that you can be awarded is $80,000 out of $97,000, which again can be much affordable. However, on the LLM side, even though the tuition is much lower, the scholarship range is relatively smaller. So bar exam eligibility, the 2-year JD grants you to be able to sit for the bar exam in any states in the United States. Again, that is for somebody who is clear that when they graduate, they want to be able to sit for the bar exam and they want to be able to practice law in the United States as an attorney. And frankly, the employment for LLM graduates, especially if your primary law degree is from India or any other countries outside of US, can be quite challenging, because when you are graduating from LLM, which essentially is about 9-month program, you are competing with these domestic students who graduated from JD program after 3 years. For prospective employers, they would rather want to choose somebody who went through the entire education, legal education in the United States, where the jurisdictions and laws are matching, rather than taking a risk on somebody who did a foreign law degree and only received 9-month LLM education in the United States. So that is a factor that you have to consider if your goal is to be able to practice law in the United States and gain employment in the legal sector. In terms of the concentration and certificate, for 2-year JD, since it's already an accelerated program, there's not much of a elective course credits that you can take in order for you to pursue a certificate. However, in LLM, you do have the option. So here's just a sample of what kind of courses and practical training opportunities that you would have as part of a JD versus LLM students. Again, LLM is just 2 semesters essentially, so it's usually about 9 months. Your class time is about 9 months, so it is really challenging for you to have additional practical training in addition to the full-time course load. However, 2-year JD, you are fully integrated with the rest of the JD domestic students in the classroom setting. So you do have the opportunity to participate in some of the foundational courses like Prepare to Practice or externships, etc. So Prepare to Practice is something unique about DePaul law. Basically, from the first year of your law school in your JD program, our law career services would offer these workshops in terms of making you be more prepared in terms of finding the employment or professionalism, or how to even network in an event setting. So a lot of those are basic foundational professionalism skills that we do train our JD students. However, with LLM students, due to the limited credits, we do not have those opportunities for the LLM students. So I want to talk a little bit about a general application instructions for JD and LLM programs. This is based on the DePaul's admissions instructions. However, most of the law schools have required similar materials in terms of the applications. So for JD and LLM, most of them are similar because you can apply through LSAC, Law School Admission Council, after registering for a free account. You can choose the law school that you want, and then you can start the application form, and each law school has their application form posted on LSAC. Some schools might have application fee. At DePaul, we do not. On the JD side, for LLM side, we do have limited application fee waiver available for fall 2020. So if you're interested, feel free to email me on h.jackson@depaul.edu, and I would mention that at the end of the slides as well. So personal statement is something that some students would overthink. It's essentially a statement where you have the opportunity to tell us who you truly are, what your academic or professional goals are after this program, and how this particular law school is able to help you to achieve that goal. And let us know why you think your background, whether it's education or academic or personal, why those background is matching with this particular law school. So resume, both personal statement and resume, I would not recommend it longer than 2 pages. And evaluate law transcripts. Again, if you already have a primary law degree, all the official transcripts do need to be evaluated for any foreign applicant. So for us, we do accept any evaluation report that is course by course evaluation from a variety of evaluation agencies, and that can be found on our website as well. Letters recommendation, this is something that many students ask about, whether to get it from a professional employer if you have worked before, or whether to get all academic references. Our advice would be it depends, because if you have worked the last couple of years in a law firm, it would be great to have a wonderful letter recommendation from one of the employers that you worked for. The preference basically is that you want somebody that really knows you substantially and that can talk about your qualities and virtues in a work or academic setting, rather than a very brief general summary about you. So it's not really about who writes it, it's really about what they write in those letters. It's the substance that matters. So for JD, LSAT is required. There are very few law schools start accepting GRE, but I again advise you to check each law school's application website and make sure that you are meeting all their requirements. For JD, most of the law schools have one enrollment period, so you can usually start in the fall, and each law school has their own suggested deadline. So make sure that you follow those and plan your LSAT accordingly. The good news is 2019-2020, there will be 9 LSAT tests administered, which means that you do have much more options in terms of the timing. Whereas it was 6 last year and then only 4 LSAT tests in previous years. For foreign law graduates, TOEFL or IELTS is required, for whom English is not the primary language. And I do understand many Indian law students, their English was taught, their education was taught in English. In those cases, a waiver is available. Early application is highly recommended, especially if you would like to increase your chances on strong merit scholarships. So that's basically the types of programs that typical law schools would offer, and the application process, as well as what those programs are intended for. Now I'd like to open the floor for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Huilan. That was a wonderful presentation. I think quite clearly laid out the different pathways for international students as they navigate legal education in the US. So students, we have some time for questions now, and I'd suggest this is a great opportunity to talk to someone who really knows this field and knows how international students can navigate this. So If you have questions, if you're interested in legal programs, do type them into the chat box, and we will try to respond to them. Can I actually begin by asking a question about location, which was alluded to in one of the slides about factors that should be considered when selecting schools. So I think there was a point about legal markets and also potentially lifestyle in terms of rural and urban locations. And I was just wondering, how does a student or an applicant research more into this? Is there, how do they know where legal markets are? And also, if the school is at a more secluded, maybe a rural location, how does that play out for them? What are the opportunities that they could use to find internships or potentially a position for OPT after the program? How do they incorporate practical training into their program? Would it be via Skype interviews or connecting to nearby legal hubs? So how does that generally play out? If you could kind of give some perspective on that.
Sure, yeah. So that's a great question, because that's something that students sometimes limit themselves to, thinking that if they want to take the New York bar exam, that they have to study in New York. However, that's not the case. In fact, so for example, to find out how lively a legal market is, there are a couple of things that you can look for. You can look at the industries that the specific city or state is known for or active at. So for example, in Chicago, we are one of the largest financial district or financial area in the United States. So that naturally draws a lot of the legal markets that are related to business taxation, business compliance in general. And usually the places that have very bustling economy, it naturally do have the legal market that is coming with it. In terms of different opportunities for students remotely to participate, one of the things that pops to my head first is a law fair that many students are usually invited to. So those are usually national law fairs that are geared toward law students. Usually it's early spring or in the late winter time. So I do think that students have to self-fund to fly to the specific fair and prepare and be interviewed if their resume is selected. But there are national resources in terms of those law fairs that are open to law students that are seeking those positions. Another resource that students should utilize is their own law career services in that specific law school, because they usually have a website that lists all the employment opportunities. And I would have to say that most likely many of those opportunities are located in that specific state or city. Even though, so one thing I do want to note is that even though you do not have to go to that state that you want to take the bar exam for the law school, but you should consider the networking opportunities and the connections that you make during the law school and how that can potentially help you to find employment. Because most likely the place that you do go to law school, you probably have attended different networking opportunities that are hosted by the law school or different bar organizations, and you will likely meet somebody in those settings that you can better impress. And those people usually have heard of your school in that location, and it's more likely to open up an opportunity when you are comparing with a remote applicant. So I hope that addressed your question.
Yes, thank you. I believe there's a question that's coming. Is this something you feel you've already addressed, or do you want to add some more?
Sure.
Information? Oh, there are a couple of questions here.
Okay. So The first one is, I believe there are 12 months of OPT available for LLM holders. That's correct. How do law universities and DePaul assist international students to gain employment, which ensures that they can get visa eligible employment? So again, that's a great question regarding employment. So OPT, it is available for students after LLM or JD program, or even MJ program. The tricky part about OPT is that even though it is up to 12 months, students cannot accrue more than 90 days unemployment. So that's essentially 3 months of unemployment. Then you do have to return to your home country. So in terms of the resources that each law school offers, first of all, the resource that you should certainly rely on is your law school career services. So what they do is they provide mini fairs that they invite local employers from the specific state or city most of the time, and do mini fairs that are open to law students. Oftentimes they see, or they would be aware of the opportunities, and they would post in this website that is open to the specific law school students. So those are open to all law students, and it is really up to the employer to decide who they like to select for resume, for the interview, and who they like to go for the offer. But all the law schools generally do offer the mock interview, network opportunities, different fairs, and career counseling in general. If students want to work internationally, what path would you recommend? I'm assuming this internationally means going back to the home country. So it then depends on what your goal is. Essentially, if your goal is to just take the bar exam here and return to your home country, it depends on your home country legal market. Some countries, having a New York bar exam and having passed a New York bar exam is very marketable, because especially the law firms that have a lot of foreign clients, they like to see that, they like to present to your clients that they have these attorneys that have these legal language skills, as well as this capacity to be able to understand US law, US legal system, and being able to successfully pass the bar. So that is marketable for certain law firms, especially the global law firms that have a lot of foreign clients. In terms of a general market, I do think that some students are here for academia. So if your goal is to eventually go back to your home country and teach in an academic setting, LLM is an advanced degree. And perhaps JD may not be required in that setting, but again, it depends on your home legal market. And I would advise you to meet with some employers in your home country or in your city to see what they would value in terms of the LLM versus JD. So, okay. So I have a question about, can you please clarify about JD and LLM and its scope in the USA? So again, the first slide should have laid out the main difference. For JD in the United States, you do have to have a bachelor's degree first. Since in the United States, there's no Bachelor of Law, all students first have to have a bachelor degree in some other majors, and then take a law school admission test, and then apply for JD. For LLM, it is for people who already have a JD or who already have a Bachelor of Law. So in that sense, LLM is an advanced law degree for people who already have a law degree, okay? So in terms of the duration of the course, do the laws differ from India and the US? So duration of the course, it depends on the program. For JD, it's 3 years full-time. For LLM, is 1 year full-time. The courses and the laws, I'm sure there are differences, and that is in fact why some of the students are willing to travel this far to learn a different education system, because when you are in an LLM or JD setting, you are being challenged from your own framework of your legal education from your home country. And it is through those different perspectives, oftentimes you do have a more broad perspectives as to how the US legal education, legal market is ran versus in other parts of the world. So I see a question about completing undergraduate in India and if he or she can pursue LLM abroad. So in order for you,
I'll just clarify here that the student is referring to a BCom, which is a Bachelor's in Commerce.
Got it. Okay.
And it's a 3-year degree in commerce. And so then can they, from there move into a law degree?
The answer would be no, because that is, unless that is considered as a primary law, but I'm assuming that is not a primary law degree because it's
not a law degree yet.
Right. So you have to have a primary law degree, a Bachelor of Law, before you can apply and be admitted to the LLM program. Okay, so what is the DePaul University's best LLM course? So we have 5 different LLM programs. The most highly ranked ones are intellectual property law, health law, and those 2 are usually the top 30. And if you're interested in trademark or patent, if you have any science background, those will be a strong factor. And health law is another one. And then we do have international law with 4 different concentrations, including international business and commercial and trade law, as well as the US legal studies if your goal is to take the bar exam in New York. Okay. Is there any question that I missed?
I think there's a last question. Maybe we'll end on this one that has just come in right at the end of the list. Oh, and yes, and there are 2 more. If there's time, if you have the time, it'd be good to handle the other one, the second one as well. I'll add on a bit to that.
Okay. So what are the other programs at DePaul for people not interested in becoming attorneys and judges? What careers do those lead to? So another program for people who do not seek to practice law but is interested in gaining legal training is the Master of Jurisprudence. So we have 6 different areas that students can pursue in those areas, such as business law, international comparative law, health law, etc. So those are a general graduate degree that is basically taught in law school with a significantly lower tuition rate compared to other law classes, even though it's taught at the law school with the same faculty and you are basically taking the classes with the rest of the law school. But since it's a degree that is not making you eligible to sit for the bar exam, and it's a general graduate degree, the tuition rate is different. So again, that is called Master of Jurisprudence. And you can see the 6 types of different areas of law on our website. Explain. So the next question is if I can explain a bit about how the US market and US universities treat internships.
I mean, could I just add on to that? We'd also be interested to know how Indian students can, law students can use how to make the most of Indian internships for their, application, because Indian students also, have internships as part of their law program, and what can they look out for, and what makes a valuable internship, and also, from what kind of internship is a letter of recommendation valuable? In terms of duration, it might be really short, like it might be a month or 2 months. Is that sufficient time to get a letter of recommendation, or should they look for other options? Just adding, chipping in a little with that question. Thank you.
Sure. So just so that I'm fully understanding, you're asking if the internships, how an internship will be valuable for international students?
Yes, I think the question that has come in is about US universities and how internships work there. And I'm adding another kind of related question, which is how can Indian students make sure they, what would you look for when you look at a Indian applicant's internship kind of list on their CV or whatever? What do you think would make a valuable internship?
I see. So in terms of the first part, in the law school, most of the time people call it externships, but essentially it's the same as internships. But externships, it's unique in a way that you can get academic credits if the employer agrees to do so. However, most of the time you're not getting paid for the internship, for the externship, because you are getting academic credit. It is much more common in the JD setting because for JD, the American Bar Association has required a 6 credits of professional training skills component as part of the JD. So you do have to have certain type of practical training opportunities as part of your JD. So it is highly regulated in terms of how many hours that you should spend, how it is supervised by attorneys, how the law school is in making sure that the students are getting a substance training instead of just a very clerical work that anybody can do. So those are highly regulated and is being overseen by the American Bar Association. So I would say you are getting a high quality training from licensed attorneys in those settings while receiving academic credit. In terms of the second part, Deborah, to your question, I think essentially it comes down to your future employment. So when you are listing an internship opportunity or externship opportunity on your resume, it gives certain confidence and comfort to your future employers that you've done these type of trainings that are overseen by licensed attorneys, and you've done these trainings so that they don't have to train you from the beginning. It gives them certain kind of reliance that the law school had provided them these practical training skills courses.
All right. Do you feel that there is any last question you think would be helpful to handle, or should we draw this to a close?
Yeah, I can take one more question, and then if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to email me. I'll be happy to respond to any of the follow-up questions or explain further. So let's see. So it does say I want to complete my LLM degree in the US. However, I do not have a law degree. So if your goal is to basically just get an LLM degree regardless, then you do have to start from either JD degree in the US or a Bachelor of Law or primary law degree in India. That's basically the only way, because you have to have a primary law degree first before you can start LLM. And if you do want to start from JD, then you have to first register in the LSAT, which you can find more information on the lsac.org. And again, I would highly recommend everyone that is interested in applying to law school to check out lsac.org, because it has a lot of information regarding how to choose a program, what kind of program offerings each law school have, as well as the application instructions. And again, if you have any follow-up questions, you can email me at h.jackson@depaul.edu, and I will be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Huilan, for this presentation, for being so willing to answer all these questions, both during the session and for the follow-up. And also, if you do, students, if you have questions regarding the general application process as well, you are very welcome to email me. You will find my email in the emails you have been receiving about the webinar. So do feel free to get in touch with me for further guidance in the application process. I think we will draw this session to a close now. Thank you everyone for joining us. We wish you all the best in your studies and careers and your applications to US universities. And thank you, Huilan, so much for being a part of this session and sharing your expertise with us. We wish you a good weekend.
Thank you, and have a great weekend too, everyone.